Welcome to Harness the Shift, the podcast where I spotlight souls shaping a new humanity. I am Jay, a neurosomatic strategist bringing lived experience and practical insight to help listeners see new perspectives and navigate their own paths. I interview leaders, entrepreneurs, and co-creators and change makers, those who have stepped into their healing journeys and are sharing their experiences and perspectives to inspire others on their path of self-discovery and transformation. During these conversations, my guests share how you can connect with them, and all their details are in the podcast description. Now let's take a moment to meet our guests for today.
Everything came crashing down. It became so difficult that it pushed me into a place of bankruptcy. It was almost like, I could still perform all the projects, no problem, because we were so good at it, and that's why we had so many contracts. But it almost just seemed like it was like, that's gone, that's gone, that's gone. I was like, what is actually happening? And then it came down to the decision of having to declare bankruptcy, and then I decided to do it because it just seemed like there were no other options. And at the time I was in a relationship and that went south. And then I was living in a house and I ended up having to move out because my finances became so dire. And I ended up just kind of getting pushed into a corner. And then now I'm the only one working for my company, attempting to survive. And, I had to move back into my parents, bless their hearts. They allowed me to move back in at 37 years old. I went months and months and months of living in my parents' basement, kind of like licking my wounds every day. And
hello, you beautiful souls. Welcome to Harness the Shift. Today, I'm honored to sit down with Curtis Knuth, founder of VitaSana, based in Ottawa, Canada. In this episode, Curtis shares his journey, how his curiosity about the human potential and the love of learning led him into energy healing, and the pivotal experiences that guided him to his purpose. We'll hear about the insights, challenges, and moments of clarity that shaped his path and the vision that continues to inspire his work. This is a conversation about discovery, growth, and living in alignment with your true purpose. Let's dive in.
life is.
Hello, you beautiful souls. Thank you for joining us today on Harness the Shift. Help me welcome our guest, Curtis Knuth from Ottawa, Canada. How
Hey,
are
everyone.
you? How have you been since we talked last?
I am excellent. Thank you for having me on, Jay. Appreciate it.
I'm so grateful you're here. How's your weather there?
Actually, we're doing really well for February in Canada. If you could say that for February in Canada. It's cold, but today we're like -1, so it's kind of nice. It's nice and sunny out, and for us, that's great. We'll take it. And we had a thaw the last few days, so a lot of the snow has melted. So this is a really good place to be for Eastern Canada. So we're pretty happy about that.
Super. It's I live in the Pacific Northwest, and our winter has been super mild.
Okay,
Like,
that's nice.
yeah, usually it's a lot colder, it's a lot more rainier. We've had more sun than than uh, than we ever have.
Amazing.
And I was just a couple weeks ago, I went up to the mountain, Mount Hood. I live in the foothills of Mount Hood, and there was barely any snow up there. So they're a little concerned about that because of, the summer coming and
Yep.
how dry
How
it gets
dry
up
it gets,
there, and
yeah.
fires, and
Yeah,
yeah. So it's a little worrisome, but yeah, it's 40 today, 40 Fahrenheit. I don't know what that would be in Celsius,
it's
off the top
it's
of my.
definitely warmer than here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty nice. Kind of cloudy today, no rain, but it's good. So, thank you for joining us today. So, let's get into it. And we'll just see where the conversation goes. So,
Absolutely.
we had an opportunity to talk when we did the one-on to come back on to come onto the podcast, and it was a great conversation. And you spoke about your experiences during your spiritual journey, and So, 8 years ago, you experienced a point of no return that changed the trajectory of your life. What actually shifted in you during that season?
So in 2017, you know, I'm sure a lot of people can equate to these type of things. Really, my whole life, I was just kind of going through the ropes. You know, a lot of the things that I was doing in my life were suggestions from other people. So it was like I was just kind of waiting for somebody else to tell me this is what I could do, and oh, you're good at that, just keep doing that. And it kind of stemmed back to a guidance counselor. I mean, the more we think about these things, we can think back to when these type of things might have been seeded in our lives. But I remember it clear. So I'm 48, and my guidance counselor in grade six went. So in Canada, we go from grade six to grade seven and eight, and then from seven and eight we go to high school.
Mm-hmm.
So seven and eight is kind of like junior high school. So at grade six, you transition from one school to another. And so the guidance counselor will kind of give you a review before you leave, right? It's kind of like her gift for you. And I guess if you would think about the time then, so I'm 48, right? And so it's been quite a while. And I think that the nuance of a teacher then, and the idea of career back then, I would think there would be a handful, if any. And in specific terms, there was 21 careers options on the paper that she had. And I guess it's just a basic thing for her, just so she could hand it out all these students. You can imagine she had to do it for so many students. So they had a refined process. And maybe she did it ahead of time, and so she gave me the paper. So she had checked off the career choices that she thought I would be suitable for, and it would be and two of them were a delivery truck driver and labor, and based off of my grades. And I was always around 70s. I wasn't an over exceller in any, so I was just kind of like mediocre in my grades. And that was her, you know, evaluation of what she thought I would do in my life. Well, of course, that is where I became a carpenter in my life. And I guess looking at it from an authority figure perspective and being a child, you kind of just, oh, okay, cool. And then you just move along in your life, and you realize where these things kind of stem from. So if there's any teachers listening or any person in a place of authority over a child or any parents, do not limit the dreams of your child or any children that are in your life, because it could stick. And think of the things that might have happened for me had I heard other things. Had she just not looked at that, like Thomas Edison's mother. He was illiterate, right? And she got a note from the school, and she read it, and they knew that he wouldn't read it because he couldn't read. And she read it to him, and she lied what was on it, because it wrote something like this. It's in the Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, and it's somewhere along the lines. Don't quote me on this, but it just said, dear Mrs. Edison, we no longer feel your son is adequate enough for being taught. He can't read, and we just think that removing him from the school system would be the best choice for us. Thank you sincerely, blah, blah, blah. And that was what it read. But his mother had the wherewithal to lie to him. She read him the letter. Dear Mrs. Edison, your son is too smart for this system. And of course, just uplifting note. And this is what she said to her son. And so he was illiterate. Let's just remind ourselves of these things. But because she lied to him and he had this idea that he was the smartest person alive, we have a light bulb. We can thank his mother for the light bulb. So I don't think we understand, when we hear things when we're young, how much is it gets ingrained into us, and more so how much we respect authority figures in our life. And so we have a really important role around youth, and I think it's important to encourage and uplift, and that can be for anybody, really, anybody in any walk of life, but most importantly in youth. So You know, that being said, 8 years ago, all those things kind of came to a halt. My career in carpentry, where I had started a company, everything came crashing down. It was so odd. I'll fast forward. It became so difficult that it pushed me into a place of bankruptcy. It was almost like, and I could still perform all the projects, no problem, because we were so good at it, and that's why we had so many contracts. But it almost just seemed like it was like, that's gone, that's gone, that's gone. It was so, I was like, what is actually happening? And of course, and then it came down to the decision of having to declare bankruptcy, and then I decided to do it because it just seemed like there were no other options. And at the time I was in a relationship and that went south. And then I was living in a house and I ended up having to move out because my finances became so dire, and I ended up just kind of getting pushed into a corner, and then now I'm the only one working for my company attempting to survive. And I had to move back into my parents, bless their hearts. They allowed me to move back in at 37 years old. And it was so interesting. I went months and months and months of living in my parents' basement, kind of like licking my wounds every day and just reaffirming how terrible my life is. And of course, we have all these social media things, so we're really caught up in what our friends are doing, where our friends are at, and where certain people are at in lives and family and some distant relatives. And you get caught up in comparing, and which brings you down even more because you realize how little you have going for yourself and where you're at, and you become not only, this outward criticism that really isn't there, but you think it is, and this internal criticism that just seems to get louder. It's just like, it seems to be the loudest thing you hear. And so in that moment, I had nothing to do. I kept waking up affirming how terrible my life is day after day. And then something shifted where, we all have these devices, and I was scrolling one day on Facebook, and I saw this, get rich quick a seminar. And I mean, what else do I have to do? I really was just like, I'm going to get on it because I had no money to invest. I didn't even know what it was. Of course, they don't tell you anything till the end, right? But I thought, well, what else am I going to do? So I jumped on, and there was a woman speaking on there, and she had been in a really good career where she was making a lot of money in law, and she left it. She had the courage to leave great amount of money for nothing. And she got into this industry. And so I reached out to her, and of course she gave everybody the option to reach out to her to schedule a call, kind of like a discovery call if you're interested in getting in. I wasn't interested in what she was doing. I was more interested in how did she have the courage to leave and just do something there was no certainty around. So of course I get on the call with her, and she quickly finds out that I'm not there to sign up. And she's like, okay, I don't know why we're doing this then. And I of course confessed, and I said, listen, I just want to know, how did you find the courage to leave certainty? And we all know what that is. It's job security. And of course she kind of laughed, and of course it became really clear that I had no interest in following up with her. But she said, listen, I'm going to tell you something, and I'll leave you with this. So she suggested this book by Rhonda Byrne's called The Magic. And it's just this tiny little book. It's $20. And she said, I highly recommend you go buy it. And she said, there's many books out there like it.
Curtis, what's the name of the author again?
Rhonda Byrne, she's the one who created the movie The Secret.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And then she's been an author a bunch of times. And one of the specific books was called The Magic, which is the one I purchased. And in it is 28-day experiments. And you can't read the book the next day unless you finish the experiment from the day before.
Brilliant.
Which I love.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating. That's another area we could talk about too, because when we start to read books, we start to turn into addicts of a person who starts a book and a person who finishes the book. So we've lost the whole purpose of reading a book at that point, because now we just become maybe we become part of a group that's a book club, and now it's, well, that guy read 60 books, I'm going to read 100. And it's like we kind of don't even implement what we've learned. We just become a person who wants to finish a book. So we can read the greatest book, which is pass over the knowledge in it. And so I love the idea, and it's actually, that's, maybe we can lead into that later. That is the premise of my book. It's one of those, these are some practical, easy things that you can fit into your day, that have a huge impact. And so I I started doing these things, and they were simple. One suggestion was think of 2 people that have impacted your life, and then that was it. You're like, oh, that's it? I gotta wait till tomorrow to read the next one? That's so strange, because it's meant to challenge you. So then the next day it's, now go print off a picture of these 2 people, and you're like, oh, I don't even have any money. I can't go.
Like
I
a
don't have a printer.
scavenger hunt.
Yeah, and I'm like, but then in the afternoon, I'm like, why am I not just going to the Staple store and getting a damn printer and print off the picture? Like, why am I resisting? So then I just went and did it. And then the next day, of course, that's all you could do. And the next day, of course, was now write over the picture the things you're grateful about these people. And it was just little things like this. And think of the person that I was becoming, the person that was affirming how terrible his life was every day, to someone who started these tiny little soft practices in his life. And I'll never forget it. This is probably the reason why I kept going. So I've been doing the practices for about 2 weeks, and I'm upstairs making dinner in the kitchen one day, and out of nowhere, and my mom doesn't ever say things like this to me, she just comes up, grabs my arm, I turn and look at her, and she says, son, I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it. So I I just paused. It was almost like something took over her and just said, yeah, that's your cue, Kurt, because
Yeah, that's your
she didn't
confirmation.
know I was reading this book. I didn't tell anybody. She just knows her son, and if her son's not happy, and then knows when her child is happy. And like a true mother's love, they don't really care what you're doing, they just want you to continue to be happy. So I had goosebumps, and I knew I was excited, and that ignited me. Now I started reading anything I could get my hands on, and then that's kind of where this birthing place. It became something that I couldn't see, I couldn't touch it, I couldn't smell it, I couldn't taste it, I didn't care. I didn't need my circumstances to shift to feel supported, and then in that internal knowing, like, it became a knowing. It wasn't like I believe these things are real. It's like saying, do you believe in God? No, I just know there is something that created all of us. I don't require a belief around it, and it's this internal knowing. So I knew that there was something going on here, which kept me hungry. And then, of course, I would read anything I could get my hands on. Anytime I would watch a podcast and someone would suggest a book, I would read it. Because if it was in my experience, I had to know what else was going on. So I would read that book, and then I maybe see a sentence, and it was a word. So I got to a place that sparked all of this stuff for me. And then it seemed to be that, I'm sure a lot of us can agree, when we come across something that we feel is helpful for ourselves, we get into this desire to share it with other people. And, you know, that led me into discovering healing arts. This is another avenue that a lot of people are unfamiliar with. And there's a lot of preconceived conceptions around healing arts, or it's woo woo, or that's terrible. But the thing is most of the people that say those things have never studied it.
Mm-hmm.
And so now here I am, this carpenter, one of the dudes, sports guys. I wasn't able to make sense of what I was learning, but I couldn't unsee it, because I was seeing these things happening right around me. And I was like, okay, I need to really understand This is all I knew. I started studying this stuff, and then I went to some of these healers to experience it for myself. And then things started happening, which really challenged my mind because, okay, so if this exists, why isn't it everywhere? That helped me because I feel really good. I have no side effects but feeling happy. Oh, I'm not dependent on it. I wasn't told that I have to come back in 5 months. So here I am being helped. I'm feeling more at peace with myself. I'm feeling calm, and my, parasympathetic nervous system was really relaxed. And a lot of good things started happening for me. But then this other part of me is why the heck do we not know about this stuff? And why isn't it everywhere? And why is it in a background conversation and not in the forefront of the conversation? And I'm not telling people that this should be the only thing we think about. I'm just telling people that it has to be a conversation and it has to be allowed in the room. And then I became really focused on, okay, so if some people are guarded by hearing galactic ascension words that they have no way of grounding in their own societal beliefs, then they're just going to reject it. Because I had to go through all that stuff. It took me a
Mm-hmm.
long time to let this stuff in because I wasn't raised with these words. I wasn't raised with this belief. I wasn't raised that I could just drive down the street, go 18 blocks, maybe take 25-minute drive, and then I'm at this place where someone is called a healer, and then I felt the healing. I didn't believe that another human could do that because of the way I was raised. So again, there was a lot of things that were challenging me, but then it became really clear to me that I wanted to describe this and share this with people with basic terms and relatable expressions, because then at least more people might let it in. And then
Yeah.
and then it became important to me to be the bridge between the egoic life that thinks it has everything figured out to the curious child that was shut down and shut up a long time ago. And I love the idea of bridging that gap and expressing these things in ways that I can sit down with my old friends and talk about it and not feel, that they think it's all weird and crazy and nuts, and I get it. I think there's a place for everything, and I know that we're all expressing freely today and we want to go there, but I think we've done that so much that it's now time to for this to hit everywhere. And and I think it's important to simplify this stuff because the more we normalize it, the more we familiarize these type of things, and we can make sense of it through examples. And I could show almost anybody that they've already done these things in their own lives, but not deliberately. They can kind of go, wow, that's true.
Yeah. It's interesting how you mentioned the whole situation around kids, right? And how, when you're limiting a child's dream, you're shaping the architecture of their developing brain. During childhood and adolescence, the prefrontal cortex is it's still forming. And so when you dismiss a child or you shame a child or you do any of that, you encode the brain. And there's this expression of like this social threat, right? And that's why it's so important to really have like a basic understanding that our actions really can change the trajectory. Another thing that you mentioned was the distinction between knowing and belief,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's very subtle, but this whole thing around belief, that mental construct, and then the knowing, which is actually that embodied certainty that that there is something that is bigger than you.
Yeah.
And I amazing, 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 amazing how you described that.
Well, I think the
And
ego is terrified of uncertainty, but the soul
yeah,
requires it.
Yeah. And the ego, our brains are wired to protect us, right? And that was meant to protect us, during the whole evolution, right? When we came about. But in this modern day, it's actually doing harm. The survival back in the day, it was meant to help us survive back in the day, but now in current times, it's becoming harmful because it's been infiltrated, um and it keeps you from being in the present. And being in the present, when you're in the present, you're with the spirit. You're
Yeah.
vibing with, when you're in alignment and you're staying in the present, you're vibing with the spirit. You're able to see what's going on out here. Someone reminded me yesterday, I loved how he described it as these glimmers, right? These glimmers from God, that it's like, yeah, you're on the right path. You're on the right path. And if you're not in the present, you won't see these things. And it's
Hmm.
so important because it helps you confirm. Like,
Yeah.
there's confirmation. Okay, yeah, I am on the right track. It's a fascinating thing, right?
Yes.
And it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time to work through all that. And I know when we talked, you're very passionate about emotions and static. And what is static, and how does it quietly interfere with performance and clarity?
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. So, with my company's VitaSana energy healing, something I created out of all that stuff I just talked about, and it took me about 7.5 years of self-discovery, experimenting with the healing arts and kind of studying the nuances of people's behavior. And I became a Reiki practitioner myself because it just kind of came natural to me. And when I started working at a clinic, I had been doing it for roughly 2 years. And people were really enjoying working with me. They were coming back to see me regularly. And there was this one particular client, she had fibromyalgia, and she continued to come back see me once a month, and she really enjoyed the relief in the pain that she was experiencing. But she kept coming back, right? And I'm just a caveat of I don't like the idea of dependency. And so I remember after one session I had with her, I'm sitting here thinking, so we're told that we can talk to the creator, or we can talk to God at whatever name resonates with you, whatever you would like to call it. Sometimes when we say something, it brings up a lot of misinformation for somebody. So I'll just call it, if you believe there was something that created everything you see. And that's what I'm talking about right now. And apparently we can communicate with this as well. I remember going home that night and I was sitting there contemplating, I'm not happy that I've been gifted this gift of healing, but yet it's not healing. So it's only this temporary band-aid for this woman. And of course, she comes back in pain again, and we diminish that pain and reduce it, and then she can leave again and feel some relief. So of course, I said before I went to bed, I was like, you know what? This isn't cutting it. You can take this back. Thank you. I don't care. I really don't. Have it back. If you've given me these gifts to help people, it's not helping people. So if you're out there, if you can hear me, if you're real, it's time to level up. And I literally said it. I literally said it out loud. I said, we're a push button society. We don't have time for this nonsense anymore. And I literally said it like that. And I really do hope that I'm not offending anybody that's a Reiki practitioner. It's not where I'm going with this. It's just that I really don't agree with dependency. I don't like the idea of having to come back and see someone continuously over and over again, almost as if it's against your own will because the pain is too bad. Sometimes people love to go back, and that's a choice. Nothing wrong with that. Keep going back if it's something that makes you happy. But when you feel like you don't have a choice, I just don't agree with that. So I fell asleep and I woke up in the middle of the night, and I just felt something had come over me, and I didn't really know what it was. Well, of course, and I don't think there's coincidences here. She was my first client the next day. So I went in and I excitedly said, I don't know what's going on with me, but something happened last night. Do you mind if I experiment with you? And, I still have a little black book where I started just taking notes, because this was the first day that this came to my realization. So in the hip area of her lower back, I had the awareness to ask her, what emotions did she feel in that area? And we wrote them all down, and then I just had this wherewithal to create a number sequence where a severity difference, right, between a certain number and a certain number, and asking her what the severity was in that moment. And of course, it was really high severity for her. And the idea was to get to 0. I didn't really know what to do. I just knew that I could utilize Reiki in some way. Because Reiki, I often do sound healing Reiki combinations with my girlfriend, and the more you explain something, the easier it gets. And when you're explaining something to people and they don't understand what you're doing, it almost seems like you don't know what you're talking about. So this is my current way of explaining Reiki. We've all, as children, taken a balloon, rubbed it against our head, put it on the wall. Now we know there's a wall. We know there's a balloon because we can see them. What we can't see is what's holding it to the wall. Okay? That's some kind of static. It's difficult to reach out and grab it, touch it, see it, flick it, right? But it's there.
Absolutely.
It's energy. And now what Reiki practitioners are really good at, and anybody else who may learn a modality that utilizes energy, they're really good at it too. Is what we're good at is funneling that static into our clients. That's it. That's all we do. And it's really important what the client is thinking in that moment. And so the idea was to reduce the severity of these emotions. And she picked 8 around this area. So we went through a session. It went a little longer, and it was emotional. And she had cried a lot during it. She was flustered at the end. She said, I don't know what the heck that was. But she's like, the pain is gone. And I'm sitting here almost in the same disbelief, but equally happy for her, thinking, wait a minute, did I just call in something? Did I just ask for something and receive it? Because I didn't even know how to equate it. I couldn't go out and tell a soul. I didn't even know what to do. Because what do you do when you know you can do something? The ego wants to go out and scream it on the streets, saying, line up. And then I had to stifle that part of myself and realize that none of us are the answer to everything. And we have to understand that. Although I did discover something, and then I got to work. I began offering it to each client that I had, and slowly and surely I started to shift out of Reiki, working with clients. And then I created this chart, and it's a 7-page chart that is really fascinating. And it really helps us hone in on the emotions that could be affecting you through severity. So what I learned, what Jay was working out individually, a session, I could learn something. But then I had this thought, maybe it wasn't mine. You got to work with more people. Sign up at events. And I was like, okay, well, why not? I'll sign up events. And not even a day later, I was asked, hey, would you like to open a booth with me at an event? And I was like, what? And then, so here I was at an event. The first one was the 55 plus EY event for lifestyle, so for elderly and retirees. And I didn't charge. I just set up my booth and I put a big, huge sign, free energy work. Because, everybody loves free. And, what this opened up for me, I can't unexplain it, because I had so many people sign up. My first day it was like 58 people, and they were all rapid sessions, so we got to pick one emotion. And I had a usual suspects chart, I called it, of emotions that everybody deals with on a regular basis. And I would just let the people scan it, and I say, the first one that jumps out at you, we're doing that. And then we would relate it to something going on in their life, and we couldn't even make it up. I had old farmers coming to see me with sore backs. They would release the pain in their back. I had a deaf woman sign up with me. She released anxiety. You can imagine not ever being heard causes some anxiety, and she released that. I had a man on the spectrum. He was autistic, and that was fascinating. He was being bullied in a workplace, and he wanted to leave it. And it was fascinating to see the reduction. And every time I notice someone reduce, I'm really aware of what number they're at. I can almost say it before they say it. And I often do. And I'm really good at that. I can really tune into you and notice what's going on in your energy field. And the interesting thing with someone with autism is they're really good at expressing things. And for him, I started encouraging him, said, well, you can leave that place and find a place where there is good workers. And, of course, his response would be, you're right. I can leave that place and find a better place. And he's like, you know what? It's down to a 2 now. And it was like that through the whole session. And I worked with children and dealing with bullying, and then I worked with partial blindness where they could see a bit better. And I was just like, I don't even know what's going on. There was just so many clients signing up. It was continuous, and I really didn't have time to stop. But remember why I said this. When I do one session with someone, I learn more about the chart, and something encouraged me to do events so I could have way more sessions. So like a weekend, sometimes the events were 2 days. It was like rapid learning. So then I went on for the next year and a half doing 13 events. And my intention was, it wasn't even about the money. My intention was to go in, pay for the booth, to learn. So then I extracted evidence. It just became this, I'm doing this to help people idea. And then every time someone would do the chart after I reevaluated after these weekends and got to work on the drawing board of what I learned, because sometimes I just passed out when I got home, I learned so much. And I began to understand this thing that you asked me earlier. And I started learning that everyone experiences emotions differently, and everyone experiences emotions similarly. Now, let's just break it down into an ingredient. We can have an ingredient for a dish, and most ingredients require most recipes require similar ingredients, but then some of them have way different ingredients, right? So that would be the similarity, would be the similar ingredients, is how we all think we're supposed to feel an emotion. So that's not us, actually. But then the unique part of the ingredient is what I started noticing from person to person to person. It was like, why didn't they feel that? Why didn't they feel that? Why didn't they feel that? And then where are all these similarities going? So then I started asking clients questions, Jay. I started saying, what's going on in your life? Is there something overwhelming you? Do you feel stuck? Is there physical pain? Is there mental pain? Well, most of the time people working with me, answers to those things would be yes. This is going on, that's going on, and this is going on in my life, and this is why I don't like my life. And then I said, okay, well, now that you've told me what each day is like for you, I said, do you think you could recreate that day for me tomorrow? And of course, when they hear that, they say, well, of course, that's what my life's like every day. But then I cleverly said, well, how about we just take out an ingredient? Will tomorrow be the same? And of course, once we started approaching clients that way, because I have to get someone to understand that they play a role in what's going on in their life, and that's a tough pill to swallow. And most of us go, well, if this person wasn't in my life, and if this person, this would be better. It's us. It's all us. And we need to make that clear, and we need to label it the right way. Because when we name something that's a little different than what we currently understand it, we can see it from a different perspective, finally. It's like looking at an abstract piece of art. If you're sitting here looking at this cup from that angle, and I'm looking at this cup from this angle, we both have opposing opinions. Mm-hmm. But if I join you and look at it from the same perspective, now I see your perspective, right? And vice versa. So it's all about I mean, you're with me in a session, so I already know you're open to something different because you have no idea what's going to happen with me because I have a lot of clients like, so what can I expect? Well, I'm not going to give you a blueprint for your life. I can promise you that. But I am going to help you see your blind spots. And, so sometimes I say, I really don't know what's going to come for you, but what we're going to do is we're going to help you learn more about yourself. And I think it's my responsibility as a practitioner to get you to a place where you don't need practitioners anymore.
Yeah.
And I bet you've never heard that from a practitioner. But I don't agree with this dependency.
Rarely.
I don't agree with the dependency. Like, I love people who keep coming
Yeah.
back. Did we just go out there? Okay.
No, you're good. You're
Okay.
good.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting here.
Yeah. Okay. So
I'm
what I
giving you the floor.
thank you. Yeah. So some of my clients say, like, I had a woman, she came back and she was all happy. And she's like, it's so weird. She's like, we released all those emotions last one. And she's like, it's not like I never experienced stress the next
Yeah.
day. But she's like, the things that were causing stress that we released around were still there happening to me. But she's like, I wasn't stressed out anymore. So again, it's the severity, it's naming it, because maybe how you experience an emotion isn't even the way you're meant to experience it. It's just learned behavior. And because you think you have to experience it this way, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy of like panic, because like I'm supposed to panic. This is what I learned in an after-school special. I watched all the shows, and it's like that's what teaches us, unfortunately,
Yes.
in life, because it's what engages us. We all watch shows and we all love them, and we learn from it, right? And
Yeah.
then we take these things on as identities, but they might not be our identity, you know.
Right.
And
Because
then I started studying Chase Huge, which we talked about.
mhm.
Was a now you can look him up and find everything on him, but what he was really good at and hired to do was interrogating for the military. And of course, you wouldn't ask someone to do that who wasn't quick at it. The reason they hired him is because he was quick. If the military wanted to learn something from an enemy really quickly, he was good at it and he didn't need to do it with drugs because he figured out how the brain works.
Mhm.
And he calls something threat aversion, and it's fascinating. One of the key things, and I've learned this too myself, is environment. And he said he would automatically put the detainee in a room that's obscure, that's really off and out of their element, and then they would give them clothes that are 10 sizes too big. And this kind of makes your mind think, like, what good would, why would someone cough up the truth if they had clothes on that were 10 sizes too big? Well, they're out of their comfort zone. And now their brain, right? Their brain is trained for survival, and it's feeling really uncomfortable right now. So it'll start to go, we got to get out of this situation now. So then when someone's interrogating you, saying, you just tell me the truth, you're out of here. We just need to know what we want to know, and then you're out of here. Well, he figured it out. He knows how the brain will react, and you might speak the truth without even wanting to do it. And he figured it out. And it's fascinating now. It's a lot deeper than that, but that does help you understand. So our environment plays a huge role in where we're at. I'll share a particular experience I had recently with one of my clients. She's struggling in her life because she doesn't know what to do. She was a stay-at-home mother, and now that she doesn't need to do that, she's like, what do I do? You can imagine a mother who decides to do that with 3 children, and then now that role is no longer really required. You can go try out something. And she just felt stuck. And like her husband just became this provider and the worker, and he kind of feels threatened a little bit that she might want to do something, and he doesn't even understand it, and it's almost like he's dousing her fire without even knowing it, right? And she says when she gets inspired to do something, it's almost like he kind of comes up with reasons to not do it, right? And so she's just kind of stuck and she doesn't know what to do. And I was like, it's environment.
Mhm.
So I was like, today you're going to move something. Just do it. So then I saw her 7 days later and I said, so how's it going? She's like, I can't even make this up. So all she did was move her couch. And I want people to hear this. Okay. I mean, we're talking easy because life is easy. It's always meant to be easy. And you're the one who approaches it through difficulty. That's a damn tough pill to swallow. It's almost like you should, another thing Chase says do is put something like a threat on your desk. Like, I don't want good in my life. Put that as a poster on your desk. I'm not worth good. I'm not, we have all this surface level positivity of I'm
Yeah,
worthy. Put that on your
exactly.
desk. Oh no, I promise you that if you just put you're not worth it, say to your kids, I'm not worth it, kids, me, and you're not worth it, kids, because this is what I had her say. And so she moved a couch. And what I'm saying that is remember, the brain is designed to avoid threat, to keep you safe. And if you read that every day, it's going to start viewing that as a threat. If you read, you're not worth it, it'll do everything it can to avoid that.
Mm-hmm.
It's so fascinating how that works. And he helped me understand that. I made connections with all that work that I did. And just these light bulbs were just firing on all cylinders. So she
It's almost like what you're saying is you take that self-limiting belief, you amplify it, and it's kind of like a reverse psychology in a way, right?
yeah,
Okay, you want to play that game, you think you're not worth it. Okay, well, do this. And then it's like, well, wait a minute. No.
yeah.
Oh,
So
no, no, no,
so
no.
there's a couple layers to that. The brain remembers
Mm-hmm.
a limited amount of things because it knows it needs to survive, right? So the brain
Mm-hmm.
will absorb millions of, okay, let's keep it simple, thousands of things, but it only
Mm-hmm.
keeps a certain amount. Now Chase calls it 40. I don't know how he perfectly figured it out at 40 things and not 39 or not 41, but still.
Right.
So we know that the brain will only remember a limited amount of things to stay safe. Okay? So that's something that we understand there. So if we only visualize positive outcomes for ourselves, and there's a lot of advice out there that says, you know, have the desire, feel into it, see yourself as that desire, as already done, and just feel yourself already living it. Now, okay, you're already that. Well, actually, what happens is, since you've succeeded as internally feeling it and succeeding with it, your internal system says, well, we've already done it. So we don't need to reserve any energy to accomplish that thing because internally it's already done. So we don't need any energy for it. So when it's important to envision the positive outcome for yourself and then envision the threat, because remember, if the brain only remembers a limited amount of things for survival, and it's always what's present, what you're doing in the moment is really important. And so we can set up a little bit of a memory bank for our brain. This is the happy thought. This is the happy feeling. This is the happy outcome. This is the feel good familiarity. I've already lived it. It feels great. And then we pose the threat. My life sucks. My routines are the same. It's getting worse and worse and worse. I'm running around on a hamster wheel. Everybody doesn't like me. I'm not living up to the future version of myself. My kids think I'm terrible, blah, 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 blah. You got to go there. Threat, threat. It can't be just a surface level threat. It needs to hit you in the bones. But because the brain only remembers a limited amount of things in the moment, it now has a memory bank of, oh, this is a threat. Okay, we gotta run towards safety here. So we got to avoid the threat. And then the brain starts to go to work. And then if we were to talk about, so remember that this positive visualization actually doesn't have a reserve tank of energy because you've convinced yourself it's already done. And how many people are on this positive affirmation train and haven't accomplished anything, or manifesting and haven't manifested? And they're wondering why they're not acting on anything they've been positively manifesting. Doesn't seem to be working. It's because you've internally accomplished it, which means your internal organs, your body doesn't even think there's any energy required to accomplish it because it's already done. So like there's no effort on your part to even finish this thing or even to get started because it thinks it's already done. So why would it exhaust any energy towards it if your body already thinks it's already done? It just, so we got to create the threat. Now, if you have the threat, you have the energy. All of a sudden you're up on time. All of a sudden you're doing tasks. All of a sudden it seems to be easy. But then there's the environment shift that ties with it, because if the brain is familiar with its surroundings, you know, Chase says it like this: have you ever walked into a room and forgot what you were going in the room for? And we've all done that. Everybody's done that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, you go from one threshold of one room because it's the brain just clean slate. Now it's in another room. So if you just walk back into the other room, you'll remember what you were going into the other room for. Because it turns out our environment and everything in our spatial awareness, the brain always has a mapping spatial awareness of that area. So then if everything in your environment stays the same, accomplishing change in your life is very difficult. And if you adjust your environment in a certain way, like moving a piece of furniture, when you enter in that room, your spatial awareness notices something that's out of place, and then it adjusts to environment. And if anybody's ever had a dog and you visit a friend, you go to their place, what does the dog do when they enter the house? Immediately. What does the dog do?
Assesses what's going on.
Sniff everywhere, okay?
Yep.
Now, if you've taken that dog back to that place a few times, it's so familiar, it almost starts barking before you arrive at the house or the place.
Mm-hmm.
Because it knows where it's going. So it's already done that part. But if you enter that house or that place or condo or whatever, and someone has done renovations and walls are in different places, that dog it won't be familiar anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And now it says, I got to adjust to this change. Okay, back to just let's get ourselves familiar. And then it says, oh, I'm okay with change, now wagging its tail. And you can see the behavior in the dog. Now we're like that. Okay? And it's just to help us understand. And if we don't squander this stuff, if we don't waste this teaching and say, how can I apply this in my life? Well, we've all traveled. We feel really good. Oh, I had so much good time. I feel great. Well, it's because you're out of your environment. You're inspired, right? And so my client the other day, she said, I just moved a couch. She said the strangest things. And of course, we're talking about dogs. She has 2 puppies. She said, my puppies went nuts. She said they were acting so out of character. They were bouncing everywhere, loving it, jumping all around, just for moving a couch. She said her kids got home from school. They were just ecstatic. Like, she's like, I just moved a couch. And she said her son pulled out a game that he wanted to play with her, that they had played lots together, and he always beats her at this game. And she said, I won 3 times in a row. And she's never beat him at this game. And she's like, I didn't know what was going on. And of course, her husband came home and it triggered him. So what we're noticing is it's working, right?
Yeah.
And she just moved a couch. You know, I mean, all we're talking is a couch here. And Chase kind of laughs because he said he works with a bit high profile clients sometimes. And he said they literally get rid of all their furniture in their whole house and they redo their whole house. And then they go through this shift. And you know, he was on a podcast with a doctor, I can't remember her name, and she had an aha moment. She's a psychiatrist, and she had a woman who was hiring her to quit drinking. And simultaneously, because she has all kinds of money, she's always renovating her house, and she was renovating her master bedroom. So she had to move out of her master bedroom while the rentals were going on. Simultaneously, she was doing psychiatry on quitting drinking. And so she had to move into her daughter's room, who was gone away to university. And on day 4, no more alcohol. She said it was the easiest thing. And so she went in for another session with the psychiatrist and said, I don't know what's going on. I don't want to drink. And she said, either you're the greatest psychiatrist or I don't know what's going on. And the psychiatrist is like, I don't know either. She said, this is good. And she said, she's like, I'm almost scared to move back into my room. I don't know what's going on. And the psychiatrist was honest. She said at that time, she hadn't heard or understood things about environment the way Chase described it. But she's like, well, we'll just chalk this up as a win. And she never drank again. Okay. But what she had an aha moment is, oh my God, she took herself out of her environment.
Right.
And then all these things just naturally changed because, see, the brain is designed to evade threat. And Chase talks about like this, if we were to think of the cave times. If someone was walking and they saw a stick in the ground, the brain would be more geared to see the stick as a snake versus to see a snake as a stick, because it's designed to evade threat.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
again, here, if we don't squander what we've heard and we just can learn to utilize this in our own lives, the potential is there. And you know what my client discovered the other day, she said, oh my God. And she's feeling all inspired. And I said, well, it's already in motion. Okay. And you know, you had asked me something about one of the questions earlier, and I'm not sure which one it is, but it does kind of equate to inadequacy. A lot of us feel inadequate to handle our lives. And, you know, I come up with something like this. On my charts, I have an association chart. I have the logical idea of what we've been perceived to believe this emotion to be. And then I have a bit more of an esoteric idea of what it could be. So this is kind of an idea that I came up with in inadequacy. I always say to people, let's say, so normally inadequacies, people just feel overwhelmed and they don't know what to do and they just feel there's no hope and they don't know where to turn. And I work with people with chronic illness where they would give you the finger if you said, just feel better. Because they've been dealing with these things to no avail for 40 years and they don't want to hear this positive stuff. Okay? And they feel inadequate because they can't even close their fist to put their own underwear on and they're only in their 50s. And I'm grateful I don't have to deal with that, but that must suck. So by no means do I diminish what people are going through. My goal is to encourage you to see something from a different perspective. And when we can allow yourself to just see it slightly differently, there's a whole other can available to them of experience and things start to shift. So
It truly is amazing. I know when we spoke, we did an exercise like this, right?
yeah,
Because you sensed something that I was going through, and it was like, it's the environment, right?
yes,
And well, the whole removing of the ingredient, and it was just like, and here's the thing, like, this is my jam. I love neuroscience, right? I mean,
yeah,
but when sometimes even I'm too close to things that I can't see. We all have blind
yes,
spots.
man, yeah,
And the ego doesn't want growth. Let's be honest. It wants to stay in survival mode. So you're like, if you can't see it, that's why coaching, I think, is so important, because it allows us to have someone that can say, hey, you got a blind side. It's kind of like when you're
yeah,
driving. When you're driving, you have blind spots, right? So you're having to, like, and look
yeah,
on each side. And
yeah.
so I thought it was like it literally changed my perspective
That's amazing.
on that.
Well,
And
if we think of the blind spot when we're driving, if we are a
yeah,
new driver who's
yeah,
being educated by, maybe it's your father or something, and your
yeah,
father's trying to teach you how to drive, and he's like, oh, watch out for your blind spot, and you don't have no idea what that is. And
right.
then he explains what your blind spot is. All of a sudden, you're more aware and you're a safer driver because you understand what your blind spots are. So it's not that the blind spot disappears, just because you're now aware that it's there.
Yeah.
And when we're becoming more aware of what's there in our life, we just go, is that all it is? And to get back to inadequacy, the way I like to describe it, we have people who deal with that quite differently in this world.
Mm-hmm.
And if we were to think about, maybe there's 10% of people who succeed at many things, there's a reason for that. Is they don't react right away. So let's say I was asking you, I have a truck, I have a big truck, okay? It's quite heavy. And let's say I said, Jay, I want you to go push my truck up a hill. Now you would look at me and laugh, of course, and say, no, I can't do that. And you might just say, that's ridiculous. I'm not doing that. Okay? Now that's one angle. But someone who isn't good at saying I can't do it, they might pause and say, how am I going to do this? Okay, I'm going to call up John, Peter, my Uncle Tom, his sons, they're big boys. And then all of a sudden there's 8 guys that show up, and now they're pushing my truck up. Now, what did they do? They asked for help.
They asked for help.
That's all they did. And then they got the job done. And this thing that they thought was a mountain in their life became simple. And this thing that was overwhelming them, all this stress, it became simple. And I think that's where the idea of working with a good coach, an encouraging coach, comes in handy, because let's face it, the coaching thing has come into the scene in the last 12 years. 12 years ago, it wasn't as popular, but today it's becoming more popular. And we're starting to see people that are really good at it. And when people can help you see your blind spots, it's a fascinating thing, because it's like you're finally willing to call for help.
Yeah.
And maybe we cling too much, and we're really apprehensive. Oh, I don't know, to spend this money. 19, I decided to sign up with a company in the UK to learn RTT, and it was $6,500. And I was like, that's absurd. I'm not doing that. That's ridiculous. So I internally fought with myself for 3 months. And I thought, this is the stupidest thing. I said, why is this so? I want to learn more about myself. You shouldn't charge this much. This is terrible. Why is everything like that? So I went through this self-sabotaging stuff for a long time, limiting beliefs and everything. But the second I let go of that money, my whole world expanded in ways I couldn't even thought. And then money, it was like I agreed to circulate my money instead of spend it. And it was just like that little shift in how I was looking at my money. I'm doing this because I'm learning, and it's the greatest investment I could ever make is for myself. So I'm not sitting here telling you I'm a millionaire, but my understanding of myself and my self-awareness and my ability to remain calm under any circumstances, it's more than 100%. It's like 1,000%. Like, my equanimity in my life is so on point. How I deal with struggles that would have just smacked me off my horse 10 years ago and defeated me into nothing and just kept me playing small is exceptional now. I don't get easily agitated. I don't get overrelated. It's fascinating. And I feel that, sometimes people hesitate to invest in themselves, but it honestly is one of the greatest investments. To learn more about yourself is so fascinating, because no one can take it from you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so with that, when someone signs up to work with you, what can they realistically expect, both in terms of results and personal responsibility? Because there is a personal responsibility with it. You have to do the work.
You have to do the work. Yes.
So if you're going to invest in yourself, like, there has to be a willingness to do the work.
Yeah, I kind of like to keep things light. I kind of joke around a long time. We do expect people to do things for us a lot, and we love having things done for us. But then there's some private things that we would never have anybody do, like wipe your butt. So if you're not willing to ask someone else to wipe your butt every day for you, why is this apprehension out there, like, to just ask the world to take care of you? Why not take care of yourself?
Right.
Because you know how to do that the best way for you. Once you start to learn these ideas and perspectives, you can really take care of yourself. Then you become this person who gets in a line, who isn't agitated, who doesn't care if the line's taking forever. That to me is so valuable. It made me think of an experience I had. there's two things that I'll say here about perspective, how it really calms us down. I was in a coffee shop one day, and I mean, again, I won't say it, but my equanimity is off the charts. I just love that because it became a stronghold for me. So I'm sitting there, and it was one of those kind of scenarios where the lineup's really long. The cashiers are having difficulty with the card readers, and there's trainees on cash. So managers are working with them rather than preparing food, right? So it's backed up and people are getting upset in line. And there's this big man behind me, this big black guy, and I remember it clear as day. This big burly guy. And I normally keep to myself because I was just kind of like, woohoo, I got some time, I can check an email. And I hear him breathing heavily and he's cussing and he's really upset and it's kind of like getting in my space a little bit. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to talk to this guy. So I turned around and I said, you know what? In times like this, I'm willing to bet that there's someone in a hospital on their back staring out a window that would trade places with me in an instant. And you know what he said? You can't make this up. He said, shit, man. I just got out of the hospital. I just went zip. I turned around. I didn't say another word. He was silent. And you want to know what happened? All of a sudden, all the line starts going smoothly. The cash, I don't know what it was. Something shifted. Everything just starts flowing. And I look back and it's like the line's going down. And it was such a magical moment. So I had an opportunity when I was shifting out of construction.
It was a
And
light bulb.
it was a light bulb, and it
Yeah.
had the ability to shift the energy in the room. And that's what we all can do. And
So powerful.
so I've had the opportunity to share this with so many people, and I was sharing this with a French woman so when I was transitioning from carpenter to healer, I was still doing carpentry and I was doing healing part-time, and now I'm full-time healer. So I was doing a project and it was in the summer and I was sitting out on the porch eating lunch, and there was a French woman who had an arborist company and she would take care of people's gardens downtown. And she asked if I minded. She was late 60s, and she asked if I minded if she sat down and had lunch with me. I said, sure. So we got to talking, and she kind of asking me about my life, and I was asking her about her culture. It's a very strong French accent. And we got to sharing, and then of course I have no issues sharing about my life, and I told her about some things about perspective, and it's really important for me. And once we start to perceive things differently, we notice things, we feel lighter. And of course I shared that story with her, and she said, it's an interesting thing that you shared that story. And there are no coincidences, by the way, we know that. She said, I've got a story for you. So she said, growing up at home, my mother had a terrible incident where she had to have her leg cut off.
Mm.
And her favorite thing was to go to the beach her whole life. And now that was a really difficult thing to do. And she said, so you can imagine the ordeal of going to a beach at the park. Now you got to carry mom, you got to carry all the beach stuff, find your beach spot, walk through the tough sand. I mean, if you got one leg, you're not doing that very easily, right? So it was very difficult to get set up. She said it would take about 45 minutes to get fully set up, then pick her up and bring her in the water, and finally turn around and have an moment, right? You just relax in the water. And she said the very moment they got her in the water and they all just started floating and just gasped. And they all floated and turned around and looked towards the parking lot. And he said, here didn't we see two boys carrying their mother who had no legs? And she said they all held on to each other and had a moment. She started crying and she said, I've never been more grateful for my leg than in that moment. So, like when we think we're going through something that's really, really, really tough, I'm willing to bet that there's someone who's been through extreme things way worse than you.
Yeah.
And it oddly makes us feel a little better in the moment. And I think that's what it's all about. I think, when we hear something uplifting, we get really excited. But then what happens when Dreadful Tuesday comes around? What do we do with the in-between moments? And I think it's holding on to things like this to realize that there's more, and life really wants you around. Like, we all want you around, if anybody's listening. We need you for a really long time. The world needs you. And if you haven't heard that in a long time, hold on to that. because that's a fascinating thing. The world is a better place with you in it. And take a breath, enjoy it, work on your vitality. It doesn't cost you anything to work on your vitality. And vitality would be things like deep breath work outside, being in the sun, lightly moving your body, not heavy, and stretching your body. I mean, that's vitality. It's very simple and it costs us nothing. And it's something really easy. If you're someone who's been struggling with low energy, those are some very simple things. If you're someone who has low finances and can't afford memberships, that's free. And rather than waiting to start, which we talked about earlier, I think one of the greatest traps in the waiting room of life is our addiction to evidence.
Yes, I was going to ask you that, and I'm so glad you led into that because it's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to share something that I call it intertemporal kindness. And it's something that's extremely simple. We can all do it. And you'll connect the dots when you hear this. And I'm sure we could all agree. Have you ever stumbled on money that you forgot in your clothes?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe money in your pocket, a season passed, and now you went back to that particular piece of clothing and you put it on. Oh, now, how did you feel in that moment? You
Well,
felt,
I think that's like, I always say, like, whenever I find that, because that happens to me,
yeah,
I'm like, bonus.
yeah.
Yeah.
You feel
I'm like,
elevated.
this is awesome.
You feel like I'm going to reward myself. You feel so happy. You're
Yeah.
satisfied, even if it's for a moment. You're feeling rewarded. And this is something you forgot about, right?
Hmm.
While intertemporal kindness is deliberate. I'm saying deliberately take money and put it in clothing that you may not touch for a while. Because when you find it, you're still going to have that same elevated excitement in you and that feeling of relief and satisfaction. But again, it's going to be a place of gratitude now. And that's true gratitude. What I feel is true gratitude. Writing on a journal is fine, but sometimes you don't believe what you're writing. But finding money that you deliberately put in something that you forgot about, and now you're like, oh, past me just loved future me. Past me did something for future me. And here are 5 ways that I feel are extremely important that I love to share with people. The seasonal scholarship. When you pack away your summer or winter clothes, tuck $10 or $20 into a pocket. Next year, you're not just finding money, you're receiving a gift from the version of you that was here a year ago. That's intertemporal kindness. That is the greatest gratitude. That is authentic gratitude
Yeah.
because it's for yourself. The digital timer, a time traveler, right? Use a service, okay? It could be anything like Google Calendar or something to send yourself an email exactly 6 months from now. Don't fill it with goals or pressure. Fill it with a list of things you're currently proud of. That's it. Because when you read that, you're going to sit there in that authentic gratitude. And this is compounding now, right?
Yeah.
We get
This
into
is
the
amazing. This right here is like amazing. What's the word I'm trying to like? It's just an amazing
self-awareness.
suggestion, right? Yeah,
Yes.
it's such an amazing.
It's so easy though, Joy.
It is easy, easy.
And I'm
That
going to share
there you
something when I'm
go.
done. When
It
I'm
is.
done,
It's something simple,
I'm going to
simple
help
and easy.
I'm going to help people understand something about themselves when I'm done saying this list. So, the emergency joy kit, okay? Hide a favorite non-perishable snack or a gift card to your favorite coffee shop in the back of your glove box, okay? Or a laptop bag. Just scatter it around there. And then label it for a Tuesday that needs a win, okay? The simplest thing here, right? The bookmark note. Leave a sticky note inside a book you're halfway through. We all got one of those, okay? Or at the bottom of a journal page you haven't reached yet and write, you're doing better than you think you are. Like that there, I know that my future self will be like, oh man, I'll just have this moment where I'll
Yeah.
feel present and grounded, right? And then here we go with the past self. So set a calendar alert for 3 months from now that simply says, hey, look how far you've come since today's date. Keep going. I mean, these are simple things, you know.
Simple.
So why this works, when we do this, we bridge the gap between who we are now and who we will become. It moves us out of survival mode and into a state of abundance. You stop viewing the future as a place of stress and start viewing it as a place where you are supported by yourself. Okay? I mean, we talk about your inner world becomes your outer. Now, if you adopt all that, would you not want that to be your outer?
Oh,
Again, we
like
want to be real simple.
this is awesome. It's easy. Hit the easy button. Hit it. Let me
Yes,
hear it.
absolutely. All right.
I love it.
I've got
Because
two of
it's
these.
so true.
So I want to challenge everyone in this moment right now. Like, because you've seen this on the podcast, you could easily pause it. You can put captions on, pause, stop what you're doing, stop your life, go write a note, do something, one of these suggestions. And if you're finding any resistance to doing this, like if you're like, oh, that sounds so good, and you don't do it, that's resistance.
Yep.
So you want to work on that resistance because you are the one responsible for holding your good from you. And sometimes we don't realize how powerful that resistance is.
So, question, how can someone push through their own resistance?
So right there, if you didn't pause it. Like right now. So just pause it. Be like, man,
Yeah.
that guy's right. I got to take my blanket off where my comfort zone is, get up out of my chair, write a note, put it somewhere.
Yep.
And then convince yourself that it is easy. Because sometimes we'll be like, oh no, there's got to be more difficult things. It can't be that easy. Well, that's cool, Kurt. But no, it is easy.
Super easy.
I had a client of mine, he was dealing with severe sensitivities to all her senses, to the point where I'll be really mindful of her and I won't share all details. But it sucked. She couldn't do anything, nothing. And she'd been dealing with this for 10 years, right? And how do you approach these things? Because I'm not coming in and saying that this isn't what's going on, because it is. It is exactly what's going on. And she's been to psychiatrists and they've given her a lot of drugs for these things and they're having severe side effects and it's affecting her family and her relationship with her husband and her children. It's really far gone. And it's easy to talk about all this stuff with a positive mindset, but this is real. This is happening to her right now. Okay? Now, something that I helped her understand is the point of origin. This is really cool for you to understand. So I said, how long has this been going on? She said, 10 years. And I said, a year and a half ago, how much did you tell the people in your life? And it's usually, if you can get a vision of the 6 most people that you're around most in your life, those are the gatekeepers of your world, trust me. And it's scary to think of it that way. But we tell them.
I'm taking notes, Kurt.
So we tell these people things about our lives that we really shouldn't, because we make it so real and we repeat them over and over and over and over, and we get better at repeating them. We start to articulate them in magical ways so people really get what we're saying. Okay? So for her, it was her parents, her 2 friends, and her 2 sisters. The closest people. And I said, how much did you tell them? And she said, I tell them every day. They call me all the time, asking me how they're doing. And I was like, I'm willing to bet they're like, oh my God, it's so-and-so calling. I wonder if she's okay. And then, of course, she tells them the story, right? This sucks and that sucks. Okay? And I said, 5 years ago, how much did you... Remember, we're dealing with 10 years here. 5 years ago, how much did you tell her about this? Or tell them about this? And she said, well, they knew about what was going on in my life, but she's like, I didn't tell them every day. And I said, okay, 7.5 years ago, how much did you tell them about this? Well, not all of them knew about it by that point. And I said, 10 years ago, did any of them know about it? And she said, no, I was the first one that had these thoughts. Thoughts of what? Thoughts of sickness. And I said, well, when do you think this all got started? And of course, she said 10 years ago. And I said that the severity of it today is you feel there's no hope and she's thinking about ending her life. And I said, isn't it interesting how loud it is in your life too right now? So I said, today we're going to have another soft thought. And these are the ones, Jay, that I like people to understand. You got to trust these soft thoughts, because 10 years ago, she told no one. She was the only one who believed these things, and then they manifested. So you're the one that's got to believe you're good today. This is the only one you got to convince. And it only starts with you. And at first, it better stay with you. Because sometimes when we have these dreams and we go out and tell our friends, they'll be like, you're unrealistic, Kurt. Get your head out of the clouds. That's never going to work. It didn't work for this guy. It won't work for you. And all of a sudden you're like, your dream is stifled. And so again, at first, trust me, everything comes about in your life. Everything. And the severity of it becomes stronger the more you express it. So you may want to watch how far you express things. Do I have time to share one more story on that?
You got
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So
I'm just sitting back and I'm just like, I'm taking notes. And here's my thing. Take notes.
Yes. I agree.
Notes are so good to take.
Absolutely. Because you'll remember it later.
Right. Like, look, I always say this. I don't know everything. And I learn something every time I sit down and talk with someone, because I don't know everything. I'm open. I'm ready to receive any and all wisdom, any and all information I can look at, discern from. It's a beautiful thing. And I can integrate whatever I choose.
Yeah.
Into my own life.
You know what I love? I love helping people with the in-between space.
Oh, yeah.
The space after the high. Because I realize we go there.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, how do we deal with the lows? How do we deal with after we're motivated and now we're not motivated and we're saying this stuff doesn't work? It does work. It always works. And here's an example. So 4.5 years ago, a client came to see me. She was 68 years old, and her husband had bought each other a gift for their retirement. And it was a 4-month trip to Bali that was pre-planned for like 8 years. And so you can imagine the money and the insurance that was all involved. They weren't getting money back if they canceled. And she's been panicking. She had a fear of flying, and she had insomnia, and she was going through menopause. She didn't know what to do. A lot of people in her life were getting worried for her because she looked like death warmed over. Just sick. And she's involved in these tea groups with a lot of her friends, because that's what a lot of people do when they're retired, and just do things like that and social things. I was working at a clinic, and the woman that I was hired under, who owned the clinic, she was a part of these groups. And in conversation, she found out about her, and she said, I've got someone I want you to come and see. So she suggested she come and see me. And because for years, she'd done the other obvious searches with psychiatrists and pills and stuff, and pills don't work. And they just mask things and of course have other side effects that weren't even involving the original situations. So it's like this Russian roulette. So you're not really sure what's going to happen. So I suggest that there are other avenues that people can check out, and there's no side effects to these things that I work with people. So she comes in, she sees me, and again, I'm looking at a ghost. And of course, I don't see that. I only see someone's perfection, and I know that there's a way. And I also don't require knowing what that way is until I'm with someone. And it always seems to find its way to me when I'm open to receiving it. So, of course, she sits down and explains, which everybody does, and I let her talk about it. And I already explained to you. So she was just, I'm not going to go on this trip. And I'm panicking, and I'm nervous, and I'm scared, and I'm sick, and I can't sleep, and everything's getting worse. And I said, okay, first of all, when is the trip? And she said, in 5 weeks. And she said, I'm going to be canceling. And I said, hold on. I said, we got 4 sessions we can get in here before then. I said, you're going on that trip. So now that we know that she's explained to me everything, and I said, again, what I just said, how many people do you tell this story to? And she's like, well, everybody, it's my life. And I was like, well, you're going to stop. And she laughed and she said, that's ridiculous. I can't lie to people. And I was like, well, no, you're not going to lie to anybody. I said, you're going to get creative about how you express yourself every day. And I said, give me a list of people you talk to all the time. And she had her suspects, her daughters, her mother, her husband, and T group. And she's like, they know everything. They ask me all the time about my life. And she tells them constantly over and over, like a record player, how terrible things are. And I was like, you're going to stop. So we have 4 sessions. She goes, and I was like, good luck. And she comes back. Second session, she comes in sad. And I said, what's going on? And she said, I couldn't do it. And she was crying. I couldn't change my story. I couldn't adjust it in any way. I just found myself automatically expressing the way I always do. And she's like, there's just no hope. And I said, hold on here. I said, last week you didn't know you do it. This week you know you do it. Right? I said, that's a win. I said, let's just kind of role play here. And I got creative with her because I'm really creative with this stuff. And I said, A, you don't want to sound like a buffoon when you're talking to them because they're going to see through it. Because they're your friends and they're your family. And if you start talking weird, they're going to say, what's going on with you? You've lost your mind. And if you start saying that you talk to some spiritual guy and he's told you to re-script your story and that's going to change your life, and they probably wouldn't believe that either. And I said, we want to get creative with the softness of how you express yourself to them all the time. So I said, off you go. We'll try this out again. And she had some ammunition this time. So she came back and she was a little bit happier. And I said, what's going on? She said, well, I made it 2 days. And she said, but the rest of the week I failed. And she said, I just don't think this is going to work. And I said, well, hold on here. I said, first of all, you went from not knowing you did it to knowing you do it to now you know it's possible. This is all a win. And she was like, well, that's not.
And you did it 2 days.
Yes.
That's amazing.
She knows it's possible. Okay. So now she goes off and she's on her merry way again. So she comes in for the 4th session. And now I just finished with a client, and in the clinic, there's glass on all the fronts, all windows of the clinic. And it was at the end of the day, so the sun's on that side of the building. And the sun was shining in. I had just finished with a client and I was talking to her. So I saw someone open the door and I assumed it was her because it was her time for a session. And as she was kind of coming into focus, getting closer to the desk to talk to the secretary, I could tell it was her. Well, here she's dressed up with a nice dress on, hair done, looking really like youthful and energetic and all kind of different. And she speaks to the secretary, and the woman who owns the place that was there was working at the desk. And she's, of course, asked her, so how you doing? And she's, now this is between women, they know the shops that they go to. And she said, I just came from this shop and I bought 4 dresses for the trip. And I overheard this and I got goosebumps. Of course, we're already done here. I mean, she doesn't even need to come in for a session, but she came down, grabbed my arm, and excitedly pulled me into my room. And she's like, I have something to tell you. She's like, I made it all week. So I want everybody just to really understand what happened. It's not only because she convinced everybody in her life. She convinced herself to, and again, I want everybody to understand that we think there's no value in the soft thought at first. But it happens instantly. There's no 21 days that it's required to, kick a habit. That's not. When we make the conviction inside, it's done. And then it's up to us to support that version of ourselves every day by starving the old you and feeding the new you. And when you feel the old you, okay, which is the static that we'll get to, because even right now is an echo of our past. So if you had a circumstance in your life and you're feeling the same things in your life now, and you're like, this is similar, it makes you think of that time, it's only an echo of the past. And what it does is it creates friction within, and we feel it. Sometimes we get queasy in our stomach, we sweat. It's like it's causing this tension. I call it static. And it feels heavy. It's like something's feeding on. Mm-hmm. But all it is an echo. Because you have to ask yourself, is this an echo of the past? And you'll know right away. You'll be like, oh, okay, maybe it is an echo. Now you're like, oh, I know this is an echo. Then why is the severity of it feel so real? right? So that's the static that it's creating that's attempting to feed off us. And then here's the other thing. If you were to look at a science experiment of a room that has 4 solid walls and they were to emit sound in it, and they were to study and observe that sound, if you could visualize it, well,
Mm-hmm.
it's creating an echo because it's bouncing off all these walls. Now, each time it bounces, it's a little weaker than the original emanation, the original broadcast, I'll say. So if it gets weaker every time it bounces off a wall, does it eventually get to a bounce that it doesn't have the strength to make it back to the other side and then die off? Yes. Now we create walls in our lives that the echo continuously bounces off. So if you create a wall, then you decide when you're done with the wall. And if you can just say, okay, now I visualize the wall, maybe it's turned, the walls are now missed. And if you say this echo is done in my life, it's at its end. It's like the echo is now at its end. It's at its weakest point. It cannot make it to a wall because there's no more wall for it to bounce off of. And that is your, if we're to call it sovereign power, it's like your original authentic blueprint. It's this innate power that we all have that we've forgotten. And it's not about gaining any understanding here. It's only about remembering who you are. That's all this is. And then you say, well, okay, I'm listening to this guy. This guy, Kurt, says that I'm a sovereign being. All I have to do is remember and claim something is mine. Well, since I don't fully believe it, but I believe what that guy's saying, I'm just going to go with what he's saying for now. Then do that. Do that for a bit. Lean on that for a bit, because trust me, it's just like discipline. At first, we think we need discipline to get to the gym, but all of a sudden, after 3 months, your gym bag's already in the car. So you no longer require discipline. So at first, sometimes to hold on to something, we just have to just let go of our barriers and be like, well, that guy's kind of making sense. So I'll try it out. Okay, so if I'm feeling something that feels present and it feels similar to something that's happened to me in the past, then that must mean it's an echo. And if it's an echo and it feels like there's friction, then the static is wanting to feed. I can starve the static. Okay, so I'm going to start to starve the static by saying the echo's done and no more. Now, if you succeed with that in that moment and you start to feel a little lighter, then you know the echo's at its end. Now, if you go 2 days later, the thing about static is it likes to come back like a coyote out of the woods. And it likes to just see if that food source is still available. Okay? So you might feel it again in a couple days. And some people may say, see, this doesn't work. Okay, fine. But now, the courageous people will say, oh, that's just the static. It's just looking to feed. I'm going to starve it. So then that's why I say, when you feed the new identity, right, and you starve the old identity, ask yourself this, how would my new self approach this moment? And how would my old self approach it? And you'll know in that moment, well, my new self wouldn't deal with this. It wouldn't even tolerate. And then you can start to have this internal boundary statement, right? Where the internal boundary statement, and we talk about boundaries, we only think of external things. But no. This is the greatest boundary you got to make with yourself. And if you say, I no longer tolerate this in my life, if you have the guts to say that, and again, these are all soft thoughts. Remember the client I said 10 years ago, she was the only one telling herself she was sick and it manifested. So did she have power? Oh yeah, great power. And I love utilizing the negative circumstances in my clients' lives to show them how powerful they are. And then since they started with a soft thought and they had no one to validate what they were feeling inside, because no doctors at that time knew they were sick until they manifested the sickness, and then doctors started validating. They got stronger and stronger and stronger, and I went to the doctors and then they told me this, what was the diagnosis, and now you're telling your friends, and now you're telling your parents, and now you're having dinner about it, and the whole family discussions about you and sickness. How come it got bigger? It gets bigger. And I like to stay here. Let's stay in the negative. Your life sucks. It really, 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 really sucks. You're probably a wizard. And if you can make that connection with what I just said, and if it hits home, you have just discovered something so valuable, and you'd be like, shit, I'm simply just directing my focus in an area that, of course, I would have never wanted, but I'm going to accept that I was, and now it's my turn. And you shift it now to a soft thought that I'm not telling you is going to manifest immediately. It's only going to be a soft thought.
Right.
That's all it's going to be at first. But I promise you, just like the Japanese bamboo work that grows underground for the first 5 years, it doesn't even blow the surface of the earth. Sometimes things take a while to manifest in our lives, but they always come. And and again, if we can manage to not squander this and just have the courage to have faith and firm a soft thought, today's the day I shift, then it's done. And if you don't require evidence, because remember, the greatest trap of the waiting room of life is the addiction to evidence. So if you can be like, evidence is an addiction, okay, I'm just going to drop that addiction. And I'm done with that addiction. And I don't require evidence anymore. You know, if we think of the 4-minute mile, his name is evading me right now, but what is it? The Barrister? Let me get it up here. I have it right here. It's on one of these. Oh, what's his name? Is it Jeffrey Bannister? Bannister. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah. So the 4-minute mile. Okay. It's known as the 8-minute mile story, but it's actually about a 3-minute and 59-second run.
Right.
Now, articles were written in the paper by professionals. So doctors, which we call professionals, and scientists, which we call professionals. Okay? Now, these were articles written by professionals that said the human heart isn't designed to move that quickly. It will burst. Okay? So for years, and it was specifically 9 years, athletes had been attempting to run the 4-minute mile. But in our zeitgeist at the time, professionals, okay, who we call doctors and scientists, I want everybody to understand this, because scientists today are making claims too. Does that mean in 40 years they'll be right? We don't know, because everything shifts and we become more. So even what we think is truth today isn't going to be truth in 40 years. There's going to be more, okay? Because doctors then and scientists claimed that what they understood the human body was capable of, that the heart would burst if we ran a 4-minute mile. So to them, it was just done. Court date gone. You can't do it.
Yeah,
Stop trying,
like
right? But
totally
I want
absolute. Like there's
he
no anomaly.
he ignored it and trained on his own.
Yeah.
And then the day he accomplished the under 3 minutes and 59 seconds, it's not that his legs got faster, his vision became clear. And that's the thing, the soft thought. They had been trying for 9 years. He didn't care. He had 9 years of evidence that said it can't be done. He wasn't looking at the evidence. He wasn't looking at the reports. He didn't listen to the professionals. He had the vision that saw himself do it, and he did it. And then here's the interesting thing, and I want everyone to understand, 9 years athletes have been trying to do this to no avail. And then one guy does it, 28 days later, someone else does it. I think it was 4 months or 3 months after that, 60 more people did it. And then a couple of years after that, there was hundreds of people doing it. Now it's just like, that's the easy thing to do. So again, one person did it. I want you to understand. And then it seeded, well, if he did it, it's possible, then I can do it. Okay? Now, I was having a conversation with someone in the sauna the other day about AI. And he's dead set against it because he said it's evil and it's only going to cause terrible things. And I shared that story with him. I said, wait a minute. I said, you just agreed with me that one man proved something against all the articles. The world was saying it can't be done and that it's a terrible thing because you're going to die and your heart's going to explode. And he proved to the world that if he just utilizes the physical body and visualizes it as done, it's done. And then another person saw him do it and believed that they can do it. So he inspired them, and then they accomplished it. And then 30 people accomplished it, and then hundreds of people accomplished it. So I said, if you become the one man who utilizes AI to the benefit of humanity, and you prove that it's possible, does that not mean that someone else will see that you made it possible and believe that they can utilize AI for our benefit and our good? And then someone else, and now 30 more people and hundreds of people start to believe, and all of a sudden we're accomplishing all of that because people think there's impossibles. That's not true. And then he just sat back because he had never thought of it from that perspective. So I said, are you going to be the guy? You know, and if anybody's listening, are you going to be that man or woman that defies the odds, that looks at all the articles that are written by these professionals and bless their hearts for taking all the credentials that they ever had, but maybe there really isn't a cap to what we can accomplish. Maybe this is where we're at right now, and if we just leave room for more. And I think that's what's helped me with this. I mean, Carpenter, you know, I've manifested this life where I get to help people explore, you know, the vastness of their minds. I'm not someone who comes at you with all these credentials and have studied in all these things and can tell you that the reason you should hire me because I have a PhD in something, but I do have a PhD in studying this.
Yeah.
And since I've done well over 500 sessions, and every session I sit down and I study it, and then I re-input it into my chart and I create a new one every time I do it, I can say that I have started to see evidence that I don't require to see again.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I'm an avid believer that the truth can change. And I'm also an avid believer that we are limited. Truly.
Yeah.
I think it just requires what you spoke of about the soft thoughts, and sometimes it takes time for things to manifest. And if we are just a little patient, just a little bit.
Yeah. Well, think about it like this. Let's make it easy. Everyone will connect with this one. So you have a thought of having a hot shower. Do you already know how you're going to feel in the shower before you get in it?
You can envision yourself, I believe.
Yeah. Okay. Why? Why do you suppose that is?
Probably because you can extrapolate the experience before. You know that a warm shower is awesome. Like
So what
one of
we've
the
done,
most amazing things ever in this life.
yeah. So this mundane habit in our life,
Yeah.
we have come to just assume the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And we turn on the hot water, we see it running, we see the steam. We're like, if you can do that in your life because it's available to you, to look at it with that simplicity, to not stress, to not be overwhelmed, to just look at your life that way. Make your life like the mundane habit because it's available. Assume that the thing that you dream about is like, you know, it's going to be a hot shower. You know, it's going to work out. So you don't need any evidence outside of you. You don't need any validation from other people. You don't need a second opinion to chase your dream. It's such a fascinating thing. It's such a fascinating thing once you go for it. And again, I think we all have to struggle with that uncertainty because, like, the thing about uncertainty is the future begins to look blurry. And to the logical brain, we're really scared of that. But what people don't understand is the soul absolutely loves uncertainty. Because the thing is when there's uncertainty, that means we're absent of logic. So we're not stating, okay, this is what I've asked for, and since this is the only way I know it'll come to me, I'm waiting for this thing to come, and then this thing to come, and that thing to come, and that thing to come. It won't come because it's like you're demanding how it's going to unfold in your life. So embracing uncertainty means your absence of the knowing of how it's going to happen, who is going to arrive. It's uncertainty. You can't, and if you can embrace uncertainty, that means you can get into this place of detachment. And detachment is you're detached from all the outcome. And it's like this unconditional living where you're not tied to the conditions of, well, I want to do this. And since all these people in the world have done this, then I'm going to view all their failures as failures that I'm going to come across. No, that was their way of doing it, and that's how it happened to them. You can't limit your way based off of the way it happened to them, because as soon as we do that, we limit how it can happen for us. And sometimes we just can't pick it. Sometimes we just can't say. Like sometimes you hear people who talk about these things who say they've had miracles, and they're like, I could have never called it this way. And it's like, how did they accomplish the internal asking for something and then getting out of the way?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it works. Like it really does work like that. And again, what do you do in the in-between times? What's the important stuff? What makes you happy? Like if you think of the first 3 things that make you happy and you write them down, do that stuff when you're not sure what to do. It's like it's when you're in joy. It's when you're having a really good time is when you get that call from an old friend that you just have a gasp with. You're just loving to talk to them. And it's like it's when you're just in joy that it's sometimes these things seem to come out of the blue in your life, and it just seems to just pick you up. And again, this is what that intertemporal kindness is all about.
Yeah.
Can you be the one to set up all these things for yourself? And if you're listening now, did you actually pause earlier when we asked you to? Because seriously, like you reveal your resistance if you can't do these simple things for yourself. Because if you're not willing to do the simple stuff for yourself, when struggles come in your life, you're just gonna feel defeated.
Yeah, and the thing is this whole concept of letting go, right?
Wants to have his say. I think your mic just went off. The mic went off.
I turned it off because he's
Okay. I see. Yeah. That's okay. I can't hear.
I have a dachshund, and so he's got a very bassy bark, and it's loud.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it sounds
And
like
he
he has
barks
lots
at
to say.
everything.
Yeah.
He barks at the wind. No, what I was going to say is this concept of letting go, right? This concept of letting go and just letting the flow, like, and not that you're waiting, but just that you believe, and
Yeah.
that it's going to come, right? Because I think that's the thing when we start to, and I'm, look, I we're human, we're programmed to do that, right?
It's
We want to be
addiction.
in control. We're control freak.
We're addicted to evidence.
Yes, we are
Um,
addicted to evidence.
I'll write the book when.
Yes,
I'll focus on my dreams when.
man.
I'll go on a trip when. I'll reach out to that girl or man when. I'll call my
Yeah,
friends when. I will see my family when. It's the waiting room. And we
yeah,
don't realize it's a trap, but it's an actual
yeah,
trap.
yeah. It is. And I remember when we had our conversation, I wrote that down. The whole waiting room of life. Yes, the waiting room of life, right?
Yeah.
And we feed into that mindset that everything that you just said. So talk to us about your upcoming book. You can't stop.
Yeah. So
Who is it for?
you can't,
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You can't stop you. My bad. You
yeah.
can't stop you. So who is this for?
So,
And what hard truth does it confront?
well, the ultimate idea is if you're to think about it, we're always taken care of, right? And we always will be taken care of. We're always going to
Absolutely.
have enough, and we've always had enough. Um, I mean, you could talk to someone living on the street and then see them 5 years from now in a different life, like doing different things in their life. And, they could tell you about living on the street and they would tell you, it's odd. I did have enough when I was living on the street. So, we always have enough. And it is a really comforting feeling to think about it that way. To realize that we've always had enough. And what does this say? You can't stop you. Like there's nothing that you can do. Like you can't stop you. we're always going to be doing something, whether it's sitting and doing nothing, that's still doing something. So it's always going to be like, even if to sit around and do nothing, that's still creating for tomorrow. So we just really can't stop the engine that is you. And a lot of people, we get caught up in the view of the world. My view of the world is really simple. It's like a train. If anybody knows Black Sheep, so I'm 48, so I'm a little dated with music. So some young viewers may not know this song. Black Sheep had a song, and it was called This or That. So if anybody's listening, it's funny. It's a fun song, but it tells you something about the world. There's a phrase in it that says, so if someone was to ask, what is wrong with the world, and the idea is that there's nothing wrong with the world. It's just that we've simply fallen off the track. And there's a chorus in there that says, if that train falls off the track, pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. Okay? Now, it's really amazing because if you think about it that way, if you asked an engineer, can you look at the engine? Can you tell us if there's anything wrong with the engine in that train? And they would look at the engine. Nothing wrong with the engine. Well, what seems to be the problem? It just fell off the tracks, guys. It's over there. Can you just put it on the back on the tracks, and then we'll just keep moving? So I think that's a really important way to look at the world. Maybe we've fallen off the tracks.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with the engine.
No.
So let's just all of us just do our part and do our little bit at picking it up, putting it back on the tracks. Now, your view of the world is extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
So if you see and only see a decaying world, a world that is dying, becoming worse every day, I promise you your life reflects that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? And that's tough because I have the opportunity to work with a lot of people, and generally it's not only people who are high achievers who are really, really happy with their life who come and see me. It's quite opposite. And I asked them this question, what's your view of the world? And they'll, oh no, it sucks. Have you seen all this stuff go? Okay, now we get somewhere when we say that because I'm like, do you see how this is affecting your life? And of course it gets quite emotional. Okay, so how you view the world is extremely important. And it's not that I'm saying there isn't anything bad going on. There isn't things that we would love to be much better. It's not that I'm saying that. I'm just saying, what are you contributing to? What part of it are you contributing to? Because it does come down to us at the end of the day. If a vehicle didn't crash into your house today and you're not a part of the accident, do you really feel the pull to get involved? And if the answer is no, because I'm cooking dinner and I'm having a nice, wonderful meal with my family, well then contribute to that and be enjoyed during your family and realize that you weren't a part of the accident and you weren't a part of that terrible thing. And trust me, you can do better for the world to be enjoying your meal and be in that happy moment than to let dinner burn and run out and be a part of the accident and just have the whole world stand around an accident and not keep going. Because it is getting better every day. It may be difficult to see that the way media is generalized. It's interesting how you watch media and they'll dwell on the positive in this way. They see a cute bear with its cubs walking across a highway, and now back to all the terror going on in the world. And like that's the only positive thing. Yeah. So again, it's like the contrast is necessary because it's how we are. Although, I mean, I encourage anybody to look this website up, the Good News Network.
Oh, I love that.
And these people are fascinating. You want to see what's going on in the world, like actually happening right now that's positive? Go on there, you'll get lost in it and just notice how you feel. Actually, here's a good example for somebody. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 meaning it really sucks, it's horrible, and 1 is really good and beautiful and fine. Write down how you feel before you start watching the Good News Network. And some people will put 8. And I guarantee you, go back to that scale after you've spent 5 minutes on this site. And I bet you it'll be at a 2. And if we can shift our mood like that, what else is possible?
Yeah. because there are good things going on in the world, and that's what this whole podcast is about, right?
Yeah,
It's about harnessing the shift in consciousness,
yeah,
harnessing the shift in mindset. Like,
yeah. And
we
it's
have the
about
ability.
it's
Yeah.
about it's about enjoying a meal too while we're doing this,
Yes.
and us
Yes.
grounding ourselves and getting out and going for a walk. And it's not all about, better days are coming. Better days are here.
They
We're
are.
here. You like stop, pause. We're meant to enjoy. Sure, we all can be uplifting, but there are going to be other people that we pass the torch to one day. It isn't all on our shoulders, and we're just going to contribute in our own way. And that's kind of the essence of the book. I'm sharing stories in it. And something that I said earlier when I talked about that other book by Rhonda Bryan, what I loved about it is the challenge to put the book down and implement the experiment before you move on. And that's how I designed this one. It is 12 chapters. There might be a bonus one, but at the end of each one, there is everything that I've learned for tiny little easy experiments that you can do that challenge you to do it to see where you're at in life at the end of each chapter. And it's fascinating how it gets you engaged, and you'll learn things, and each chapter and each experiment is designed to learn something on the next one too. I kind of added a little clever progressive part of this whole book that you'll learn things in the first chapter that you'll start to see more clearly, and you'll be like, oh my God, and you start to make connections with each one, and they each leapfrog each other. It's fascinating. It's taken me a little bit to put it together, but I'm really happy with where it's headed. So that's what the
That's
book's going to be about.
amazing.
It's a book that you literally have to implement it. You have to put the book down. And maybe you don't even read the whole book. Maybe you get to chapter 6 and you're like, I'm good. And that's what I love about it too. Yeah. So
So when will that book be available?
so I've kind of made an internal declaration in the other day, and it looks like it's mid to late May I'm going to be putting out there. Yeah.
So that's very soon.
Yep.
I love
Yep.
it. I love it.
So I'm I'm
So
I'm
good.
I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be short. It's not going to be this big massive book, and it'll be my first one. So I look forward to other ones.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Curtis, I'm just like, what an amazing podcast. Like,
Awesome.
I'm over here making notes. You probably saw me doing that, looking down, making notes, because I mean, just so much wisdom, so much lived experience that
Thank
you've
you.
just shared here. And so, listeners, make sure if you got to go back, make notes. Like,
Yeah.
that's what it's all about, is to take the wisdom that you hear and integrate it into your life, whatever it is that resonated with you, and that's what it's all about. And we are supported, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's what this is all about. It's about co-creating and supporting each other. And so I truly appreciate, I'm so grateful that you've come into my orbit. So many
I
of
love it.
the folks that I've interviewed, I'm literally like just blown away every day. It just gets better and better and
Yes.
better. And that right there is manifestation. This is
Yes.
manifestation.
Absolutely.
It's happening. It's like,
You're right.
yeah, you put the effort in, you put the effort in,
I think we
and
all overlook a lot of things that we're
yeah,
currently utilizing
yeah,
today that 100 years ago people were attempting to manifest.
yeah,
We're
yeah,
on these devices,
yeah,
so things have been answered, and we're currently
yeah.
utilizing these things to our advantage. So a lot of this stuff is something that's part of our manifestations, and we don't really realize that. And this is when we take note of things we're grateful for. I'm grateful for this opportunity with you. It's amazing.
Well, I appreciate that, Curtis, and likewise. And definitely want to have you come back. There's
Yes.
so much we can explore.
Oh, absolutely.
So definitely want to have you back. Appreciate your time today.
It'd be
Thank you
cool
so
after
much for
the
joining
after the
us.
book's launch too. That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm excited for you. So I did share your if you want to just give a shout out for your website.
Yep. So it's www.vita, as in Victor, so VITASANA, so VitaSana dot V as in Victor, so VIP, so very important person is the dot.
And then I also have your email here.
Yes, so that's VitaSana Energy Healing at gmail.com. And anybody can reach out or go to the website and book a discovery call, or we can chat and see if we're a good fit for each other. Yeah.
Great. And then do you want to give a shout out of your social media handles?
Yeah, so I have VitaSana on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, where those ones I like to share really short videos that just give you quick little insight that kind of get you thinking, and it's just like, it's a good outlet for me. I really love expressing where I'm going through, like the things that I'm going through in those moments. And that's kind of how I like to share on social media. It's not really about getting clients. It's just about sharing where I'm at. And I think it's really fun to do that because it might hit somebody, it might resonate, and then, fulfill your day a little bit.
Well, that's the thing. It's always ever flowing, right?
Yeah.
We're on this journey and it's a good way to capture the journey, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And
yeah, you're welcome.
And I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We'll be in touch.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Okay.
Take care of yourself.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Thank you for dialing in and listening to Harness the Shift podcast. I'm Jay, your host. I spent 23 years in clinical research and have now transitioned into guiding leaders, creators, and change makers through coaching and consulting. I also am a brand partner with LifeWave, and more information about the research and this work is available in the Central Hub link in my bio. During these conversations, my guests share how you can connect with them. All their details are in the podcast description. I'd love your help growing this podcast. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with anyone who may benefit. And make sure to subscribe and follow on YouTube, Spotify, and soon Apple Podcasts under Harness the Shift. You can also stay connected with me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok at Harness the Shift with Jay, and follow my long-form writings on LinkedIn and Substack at Harness the Shift with Jay. The podcast has its own Instagram channel, which is Harness the Shift Podcast. Everything I mention, coaching, retreats, guest info, and offerings is centralized in the Central Hub, Harness the Shift with Jay. Stay rooted in the light. We're all aligned by design, and together we're harnessing the shift.